Good. Hi, everybody. I was going to say good morning, but there's many of you that it's good evening. This is Tiffany Tuota. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and today we are going live on City Sunday. We're going to start a little early, as always, to get set up and get people, give people time to get established. So give us a few minutes. We're going to be hopping on. Today, we're going to be talking about why do you get defensive? Why do we get defensive? Now, many of us coming from our culture, we know all about defensive behavior. Hi, Mita.
Hello.
Oh, wait, I can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Hi, yo. No, now I
Can you
can.
hear me?
All right. How's it going? You look great.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Thank you. Good to see you. So today, everybody, thank you for starting to hop on and join in. We're going to give folks a good 4 minutes or so before we get started. Thank you for joining in. Those of you that are joining in, we would love to see where you are coming in from. That's always so awesome to connect with our community. We have people from all over the Arab world, which I absolutely love. Any Bahrainis in the house? I feel like you guys come on every Sunday. Dubai, we've got, and Yemen, Egypt. I think Egypt is always in the house. Oh, Algeria, thank you. TikTok, good to see you. Anybody else before we get started? Let's kind of connect and get to know one another. My name is Tiffany Tuota. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I'm coming from Los Angeles, California. I'm a Palestinian American. For those of you that have asked that in the past, you can find a link in my bio to get more information. Nita, did you want to share with everybody where you are?
Of course. I'm joining you from Egypt. I'm Mira. I'm Tiffany's assistant. I'm very happy to be part of this community. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Mira, you are an amazing assistant. I'm so blessed to have you every day. Thank you so much. Mira will be monitoring the comments because we want this to be a healthy and positive community. So any comments, she will delete anything that's not good energy, good vibe. We're here to have discussion, not attack and all that stuff that you see on social media. Let's see. I think we had somebody from Michigan. I think it was Stephanie.
Yes,
Welcome.
Tiffany.
Welcome, Michigan. I think Michigan has one of the highest Middle Eastern populations in the United States. For those of you that don't know, I think there's also some of the best how to be desserts in the United States, heralding from Dearborn, Michigan. So shout out to you guys. Oh yeah, there you go, Stephanie. It sure does. Yep. Hi, Miss Nessedin. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Hello, good to see you. Anybody else coming from the United States or any other parts of the Arab world? Washington. All right. I'm going to say Washington State or Washington, D.C. Let's see. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Mita, can you read what somebody wrote in Arabic, please?
No, I don't think that's correct. Maybe they can write it again. Doesn't make sense.
Oh, okay. From the opposite part of the globe. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Washington State. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful state. Lots of rain, I think, out there. All right, welcome. Let's see. Kamal has joined us. Daniel has joined us. Mustafa, I love Rada. I absolutely love. Hi, Rami. I think you've been on before, Rami. I'm not sure. Sudan is in the house. Oh, God, sending lots of blessings to your country. Lots of blessings to your country. Let's see. Anybody else? How are we doing on time, Mira? One more
Uh,
minute. I don't do Arabi time, by the way. When I say 10 o'clock, I start right at 10 o'clock. So that's why I
okay.
give you guys a few minutes to come in. No Arabi time here. Let's see. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to start in about 1 minute.
1 minute. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? Let's see. Nazar, I love seeing this community. Mina, I think we're almost at 6,000 community members.
Yeah, we are.
Thank you, everybody. The support has been unbelievable. You know, I have a video around Amati and people in my life, family members that thought I was absolutely crazy for doing Arab and mental health. They said, Inti Majnuna, why are you doing this? And I said, this is so important for me to be able to offer a space for our community members to come together to heal. Now we come together for haflat. We come together in different things. Hi, Christine. Good morning. So good to see you. That's my cousin, everybody. She'll be in the comments monitoring you too. You guys better watch it. All right. Hi, everybody. Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Let's get started. Today, we are going to talk about why do we become so defensive? Now, let's begin with healthy and loving relationships include our ability to address our frustrations. Okay. Now, how many of you have spaces in your life where you can express your needs and frustrations with the people in your life without having them get defensive? If you guys can put yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down. How many of you have this space to be able to talk about that? And that includes your children. Any of you that are parents, can your children come to you with their needs without you getting defensive? How many spaces? Mira, do you have spaces like that in your life sometimes? Yeah, thank you.
Very few people.
I think FDT said no spaces. Jay, I have a whole video on toxic parenting, but today's topic is going to be about defensiveness. So this may give you some understanding around that. Yeah, Stephanie says there's one or two people. Not in my family, but yes, outside of the family. So you know about how important it is to surround yourself. That's a healthy, normal thing to expect. Someone to be able to hold the space for you when you're expressing any kind of frustration or need. More often than not, we don't have those spaces. So I'm going to encourage you to find those spaces. Or you may be somebody that doesn't create a healthy environment for the people in your life to express their needs or frustrations. Now, as we know, defensiveness can take on many, many forms. People may attack you verbally, sometimes physically, right? Attack you verbally or emotionally. They deny what they've done to you. They fabricate lies and stories to protect themselves. And so here you are, like they're lying, they're fabricating this whole story, and you're at the brunt of that. Awful. They avoid conversations altogether, and they shut down, right? We call it stonewalling. They don't even acknowledge anything that you're saying. And then another one, which now I know this coin term is very popular, is they gaslight you. Now, what does that mean? It means when someone attempts to sow self-doubt in you. Now, it's subtle, right? A lot of times it's subtle. Now, if you don't have clarity within yourself, this defensive behavior can really throw you into a tailspin. It's like they just put enough self-doubt in your mind to cause confusion. And many Arab are very good. Many Arabi parents, somebody talked about toxic parents. Oh, they're so good at it. Because when we doubt ourselves, we're not aware of ourselves, we can easily fall prey to gaslighting and these forms of defensiveness very easily. So you also have to be careful. Do you do this to other people? So today I'm going to be a little kind of like I was thinking about it. I go, okay, Tiff, don't be like the auntie and give the people behdale, right? Did I say that right, Mira? Like, I don't want to be that person. But today it's really about accountability, self-accountability and self-responsibility. That I just see this trend in social media where everyone's blaming everyone else, and that's a defensive behavior. And very little are people reflecting on what are they doing to be a part of this dynamic. So this is about today, if you really want to grow in this, is to be honest with yourself. Now, you're in your own little space here on this life. No one's judging you. No one's doing anything to you. So I'm going to ask a question. Now, please be honest with yourself. How do you respond when someone calls you out on something or points out something that you did wrong or gives even feedback? How do you respond? Take a deep breath. Think about how do you respond? What comes up for you? Now, I've noticed we can go into Arabi family gatherings and people are already defended or defensive even when nothing's happening. They're ready to fight you for just breathing. Oh, Jay says, I look for excuses. Very good. Thank you for being honest around that. It's not my fault because I really didn't do anything or act. Thank you. It depends on, oh, Carlina, I love this. It depends on how they approach me. I would love to talk more about that. So if they come at you in a certain way, you may match that energy, right? If they come at you defended, you may come at them defended. So I'm trying to let you guys know we need to get out of that tit for tat. Yeah, look for excuses. Yes, we need to move out. Yes, we look for excuses. So we're trying to move out of that, and we're going to talk about that. So if they come at you, they're ready to fight for you just breathing. I also call it the Arabi eyes. Have you ever been in family members who are ready? They're like, they're ready to fight you. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Mira, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
The Arabi eyes, they're scary, right? And so
Yeah,
if
it's
someone gives you the Arabi eyes, you may match that with what? And you may have your own Arabi eyes. And that's
Yeah.
what we're trying to avoid. Let's see. I am phenomenal says, no, on the contrary, I absorb the hostility, then move to have a civil conversation. Now, we're going to talk about that. We want to move away from absorbing to a place of observing, because it's a beautiful place to be in having a civil conversation, but you can't speak the language of love to people who only understand the language of war. So you need to be careful with that. All right, let's keep going. Now, oftentimes you have to remember we came from family upbringing where there was a lot of criticism, judgment growing up, okay, in many of our family systems. I have videos on that. I'm not going to get into that. So now, anytime anybody gives us feedback, because we had to constantly defend ourselves growing up. Oh, wait, somebody is disagreeing. I may disagree because people tend to match the vibe you let out. Depends on the person. We have to be really, really careful with that. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but we need to be very careful with that, particularly sensitive and loving people. Sometimes the threat, anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that. I hear what you're saying. All I'm suggesting is we need to be really careful with that. So let's go back to defensiveness. Growing up, you may have been in a constant stressed out state because you don't know what criticism, judgment is coming at you. So now here we are, adults, everything may be seen. You may have this filter of it being seen as a perceived attack when there's no attack. But because your nervous system is conditioned to constantly be on the defensive, you could be in a loving relationship with your partner. You may have a really cool coworker, and then they ask you a question, and you're already metaviz or metavizet, and you're ready to, you experience it as a perceived attack. This is where self-awareness is so key in this, to say, what comes up for me on a bodily level? A lot of times, what you're perceiving is not the actual reality, okay? So this typically stems from unhealed trauma, your own insecurities, and not knowing yourself well enough to see what happens. All right? So part of it is know thyself. Know what your triggers are so that you don't fall into, when someone gives you feedback, you're going to match that energy. Any questions so far? Mira, any questions?
No, not yet.
All right. So let's talk about what does defensive behavior look like, and ask yourself, do you do this? So the immediate rebuttal. So you give feedback or you're offering a need, and immediately the person doesn't even pause. They don't even listen. Here's what they're doing. They're jumping to defend their actions. Or you may be defending your actions. You're interrupting them mid-sentence. There's this, this happens in couples a lot. This is where the power of the pause. How do you slow yourself down before the immediate rebuttal? How do you slow yourself down to actively listen? But you're already hit internally. Again, coming from childhood. All right. So what's going on in the comments? I see some.
Yeah, I think people are having a conversation because the person that disagreed, someone is answering them. Would you like me to read it for you?
No, that's okay. I love that they're engaging. This is wonderful. This is healthy discourse that
Right.
many times we all come from our own perspectives and our own. I'm not saying I don't tell anybody to do anything on my platform. This is about you creating awareness within yourself on what these concepts mean to you. So you can have whatever experience you want. What doesn't apply, let it fly. Because many times in the comments, people say, well, that's not my experience. That's okay. It doesn't have to be. But does that mean it's not anyone else's experience? That defensive behavior, just go on my comments in any of my videos. Bichufu. And I said, this is all, and I'm going to talk about that, people's projections. It has nothing to do with you. All right. Immediate rebuttal. Number 2, blame shifting. Blame shifting. Many times, instead of accepting responsibility for what has happened, you may point out other people's behavior. So instead of you saying, okay, I messed up, I screwed up, you're going to say, well, what did you do? Look what you did. I'm this way because of you. That's a complete red flag that they are not taking accountability. If they start to blame you for their behavior, guess what? You're not that powerful. You are not that powerful to impact somebody else's behavior. Sorry. So if someone tries to blame it on you, this is about not taking that blame, which many of us did growing up. We would take on all this blame that wasn't even ours. Don't do that to yourself. Be aware they may be shifting the blame away from them and project it onto you. I'm going to encourage you to give it back to them. And we'll talk more about that. Okay, the next one. This one, I love it. Whataboutism. What does that mean? When you bring up a life concern or something that's important to you, and you may respond with some unrelated past experience. I think I hear this a lot from many men in marriages that they get very frustrated with their partners because they'll do this. What about when 10 years ago into Sowetic? And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And so instead of focusing on the current issue, people will do this. What about 50 years ago when you did this, to deflect from their responsibility in what's happening today? And if you do that, what about know that that's a defensive stance and to really work on what are you trying to deflect from? Because there's an opportunity with all of this to learn and grow and connect and to be healthy and loving towards one another. And I'll give you some recent examples that I had with my sister even just this morning on that. The next one, dismissiveness. Our culture, now I love our culture. That's why I'm doing this. I love who we are as people. Yet, I want to acknowledge we are so good at dismissiveness. What is that? Family and friends may downplay any feedback, any need, any frustration with, it's not that big of a deal. You're being too sensitive. Maalash. What are some other things you guys hear that's dismissive and that's a very defensive behavior in not listening to the person? Nita, any feedback anybody has on dismissiveness? Anytime you tell someone it's not a big deal, you are literally shutting down an opportunity to gain understanding of what that person may, just because, oh, Basita. Thank you, Carlina. Yes, Basita. What else?
They will blame you for your feelings.
I love it. They immediately compare you to somebody else's situation. Oh, I call that the oppression Olympics, where you're bringing something up, they'll say your life isn't that bad. Shufu shusarma hada blah blah blah, and it's like, yeah, okay, we're not playing and I'd love to play the oppression Olympics. Our situation's worse than yours, and your situation. We need to move out of that. And again, it's deflecting on the current issue of what needs to be addressed. Okay, so now let's keep going. What would be some reasons why? Sorry, let me look at the comments. Fatima, what it makes you feel ungrateful. I would love to talk more about that. Yes, that idea that you're not grateful for what you have. And I always tell people, especially out up here in the United States, because for the most part, again, everybody has their issues. And just because someone has it worse somewhere else, it does not mean it's worse for you in your life. This is that we gaslight ourselves. We tend to minimize impacts of what happens to us. Why? Because we're not suffering greater than somebody else. I mean, I hear that. That's a perspective, but you don't have to downplay what's happening in your life because of somebody else's situation. All right. Anything else before I move into what some of the reasons why? Well, let me ask you guys, what are some of the reasons why you become defensive? What would be, Mira, what would be some reasons why you've seen people becoming defensive?
I'd say they lack confidence. They do.
I love that. Low self-esteem, low
Yeah.
self-worth. Because we fear, especially because we come from a culture where we're like that fear of being incompetent or inadequate. We protect our image. And I've said this a lot. It is, and I tell my Caucasian therapist, I say, hey, when you're working with Arab, you got to be really careful because our masks are so good. Our masks, we look put together. We look like we have it all, and inside we are crumbling, and you will have no idea. So I said, you guys need to be really careful because of this. We get defensive, but our titanium, yes, we are titanium. I've been titanium, and I have stories about that, right? So you have to remember that our desire to protect our image is very, very strong. And so we may, these masks is always having it put together. It may lead to this defensive behavior because we are afraid of that vulnerability of being found out. Like, I don't have it all together. I'm afraid to let people know I'm anxious or depressed, or I have marital issues or issues with my children, because we have to have this, I've got it all together. And again, that stems from, of course, our earlier childhood experiences. What are some other reasons? Let's see, comments. Any other reasons why? Low self-esteem, low self-confidence. Why do we get defensive?
Because I feel guilty.
Oh my gosh, who said that? I love
Christine.
that. Christine, oh, Christine, yes. Out of guilt, I always say if we can like bottle up that and mommy guilt, right? Mommy guilt, out of guilt. If we can bottle it up, I'm telling you, it is a weapon of mass destruction. I know there's probably inappropriate mental listening to me. Anyway, but you guys see what I'm saying? We come from a guilt-ridden culture. And if we don't do something, or if we don't do something perfectly, or if we don't please other people, we may feel guilty. Now, because of this complicated nature in our culture, the expectations are so high, we could feel guilty for breathing, right? We could feel guilty for breathing wrong. And so you have to ask yourself, before you start to feel guilty or feel guilty or get defensive about feeling bad about something, I want you to ask yourself these questions. Number one, do I need to take responsibility for this? Am I feeling guilty and feeling defensive? Before you even go there, go, is this my responsibility? And then I want you to ask yourself, is this an issue that truly I need to address? Or is this issue of guilt that I'm feeling, like, is that something because I did something? And if you didn't do anything wrong, I'm going to encourage you to let go of that guilt and really encourage you to let go of that defensive stance to move more into a coping stance, which I'll talk about a little later. Any other feedback? Okay, I've got a few more on reasons why. Perfectionism. Many of us have this very perfectionistic view. This is big with couples. Past experiences. Yes, who wrote I am fun? Yes, based on someone else's experience. That's right, past experiences. This is a big one for couples. If you were in a past abusive relationship or unhealthy relationship, a lot of times in our current partnerships, you may take feedback, any feedback from your partner as negative or being criticized. And your healthy new partner may be just trying to communicate with you their needs and offer feedback. You may have created a pattern of defensiveness as a way of coping. So I'm really, what is someone saying? Ethnocentrism, all I hear. I'm not sure what that means. I'm open to feedback. I don't take that defensively. I just don't know what that means. So if you wanted to comment, I'll be more than happy. Look it up. Okay, Ahmed is not willing. Can we delete that? That's really, that's not what we're trying to do here. I'm sorry. We're not trying to do that. I don't know what, I'm open, but see, because I don't want to get offended or defensive, that's a perfect example of someone throwing something out there. They don't want to explain it. That's a great example. So I didn't want to engage. So we just let them go and they'll figure it out on their own. Okay, couple more. Childhood experiences, fear of judgment. When you have high anxiety, okay, when you have high anxiety, I want you to remember that your thought process may be compromised. So if you're in a real anxious state, your ability to look clearly at the situation may be skewed. So you may perceive it more as a threat than what it really is. So again, slowing down and understanding the situation at hand. Couple more on why we get defensive. Now, anybody relate to any of these things? Let me go over them quickly. Low self-esteem, low confidence, perfectionism, past experiences, you're bringing it into your current situation, childhood experiences, harsh parenting, bullying, trauma can teach people to feel defensive. And sometimes that's healthy and that's adaptive, but we'll talk about that a little later. Fear of judgment. We are panicked at the ability of the thought that people may judge us, and that can lead us to very defended behaviors. I talked about high anxiety. I think Christine mentioned guilt. Now, I've got two more. Let's see the feedback. I feel like I'm putting in more work than them doing mental gymnastics. Yes, of course, Stephanie, because you're the more capable one. But that's part of a decision you make. We're all doing mental gymnastics to navigate these relationships. But more importantly, how do we move forward in a way of healing and love and care? And sometimes that requires you to do the emotional labor. There's nothing I can say to that except you're making the decision to be in relationship with them. And sometimes that could be empowering instead of like, I'm doing this because I have to. For most ADA parents, I can say that fear of losing control. Now, they anytime you give them feedback or any hurt or anything that you've done or they've done to you growing up that you wanted to talk to them about, they may become intensely defensive. Now, the reason at the crux of that may be their fear that if they admit fault or if they take accountability, that they will be seen as a bad parent, that they may be seen as weak, that their ability, they fear this losing control of the dynamic in the family. It's the exact, if I can say this, it's usually the exact opposite. When you can hold the space for your children to say, Habibi, Habibti, I was wrong. I'm sorry I did this to you. How can we move together? How can we move together forward in listening to each other and not becoming as defensive? So I want to give a quick example. Anybody, let's see. Anything else in there?
Reem said they fear being judged by other Arabs, so they have to always make sure to be raising you old school.
And we're not going to worry about our parents. We're going to worry, and that depends on the generation. We're going to focus on you. How can you move forward to change this dynamic for future generations? In my own family system, I can say I've made some strides because of my work to be able to help them move to less defensive stances. However, that's just part of who they are. And it's really focusing on my daughter and raising her in a way that it's not defensive, that I'm not being defensive. As an example, my daughter gave me feedback the other day and she says, you know what, Mama, you have this habit of snapping quickly. I call it the Arabi, like little things like you're off the cuff, this Arabi snapping. And she said, Mama, it causes me stress. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. Now, in my mind, I immediately got defensive because I was like, uh-oh, I'm not a perfect parent. Uh-oh, I'm failing her. Uh-oh, what's happening? And then I slowed down and then I paused. And I recognized her experience of me is her experience. And as someone who loves her and who values our relationship, she's 17, by the way, I said to her, Habibti, I will work on my immediate reactions to get more emotional regulation and work on my own trauma responses. And I've done a lot of work on that. So I checked in with her. Hey, how do you think Mommy's doing on that? And she said, you know what, Mama? I've noticed that it's been better and it makes us feel better. Okay? It makes us better. She can now trust me more. She's able to share her feelings more. You see how that works? So this is what you can do for the people in your life, but it takes a lot of work. Next one and the last one. Let's see. I think most of our, I am phenomenal. I think most of our problems today could have been solved by communicating better with our parents. Well, yes, and who taught us the skills on how to communicate better? Who taught you emotional regulation? How were we taught about trauma and anxiety and depression and substance use and all these things? Sexual trauma, neglect, physical abuse, and the impact. I think, Nadine, you said sometimes communication makes things worse. It depends on the parent. It depends on their emotional ability to handle things. Mostly from actual experience, but we weren't taught how to communicate effectively and healthily. Let's see, Reem said we weren't, a lot of things were unspoken. Absolutely. That's why I created this community. Because we need to speak about these things in order to heal. We got to feel it to heal it. And this is where we need to understand ourselves first, so that we can move forward. Now, the last one, and thank you to everybody for your comments. I love this engagement. This makes me feel less alone in kind of my experiences. And right, Mira? Isn't it so refreshing to see everyone's comments and experiences? Because it's like, yeah, we're not alone. And we're having a healthy dialogue around this. I love this. So thank you. So another reason why we get defensive is misinterpretation. Now, again, I talked about this misinterpretation coming from anxiety, coming from our own traumas, and misunderstanding someone's intentions or interpreting a comment as an attack or a trigger. A lot of times that's not their intention, depending on the person. So how many of you have misinterpreted a situation? How many of you have misinterpreted a situation? You thought it was something, you became defensive, and you misinterpreted what was happening. Mira, anybody? Yeah, Nadine, thank you. Yeah, we've all misinterpreted situations until we collected evidence around that. And so part of it is reminding yourself, my sister and I moved through this a lot. We had lots of arguments and fighting. We were both, thank you, Christine, always. Yeah, we would have these misinterpretations of one another's responses. And we just, when we slowed down and actually got to the crux of it, we were both on the same page. We both wanted the same things, but we were misinterpreting each other's behaviors and thoughts and actions. And we were able to slow down and talk about it from that vulnerable place. I got to tell you, our relationship has improved 100 times better because she's doing the work, I'm doing the work, and we're able to explain from a place of vulnerability and not defensiveness. That's where healing occurs. But that also requires me doing the work and her doing the work. If you have a sibling that's not doing the work and they're entrenched and they're in their thought patterns, what can I say? Probably not a good use of time in testing this out with them. So, all right, misinterpretation. Now, this is where we don't want to assume or blame the other person. Again, take accountability. Where are you at with this? All right. You guys ready? How are we doing on time, Mita? Oh, 10:30. I better start speeding up. This is keep going. Now, you guys have to remember, defense mechanisms are your mind's way of dealing with stress and difficult emotions. Now, psychologically, that makes sense. You want to defend yourself. Self-protection is an inherent human need. It's inherent in who we are in our humanness, is to self-protect. So defense mechanisms are not always bad. Sometimes they could be healthy. Like in the Arab culture, we use humor which is a defense mechanism, to deflect, and we make jokes to avoid difficult feelings. That's what I love about the Arab content creators who make jokes of very difficult issues with our family systems. And even when I'm doing therapy with my Middle Eastern clients, we will laugh about something or make a joke about something, and I always name that. Do you see what we did? There was a difficult emotion that came up in session, and then we're laughing about it. And so in recognizing that, we could see that it'll create some levity in the body. And then once you address it, you can move forward in addressing the deeper issue and the difficult emotion. Sometimes with those with significant trauma histories, checking out, it's called disassociation, where it may be a survival. If you're in a traumatic environment and you find yourself there physically, but not there emotionally. In my family, we call it going into la-la land. Like we cannot cope with what's happening. So we all kind of just move out of our bodies, and it could be extremely distressful. And it may be what you need mentally to disengage yourself from the situation. Now you can see where humor and disassociation can be healthy in certain situations, and you can see where it can also be problematic if we do not address these things. So as I've mentioned numerous times before, we come from a very dichotomous culture. We are incredibly resilient for everything that our cultures have gone through, no matter where you are in the Arab world, in the United States, in Europe, anywhere, that we are very resilient. So what does that mean? I believe that these defense mechanisms help us in our survival. But I also see that these defense mechanisms have impeded our ability to grow and deal with these intense emotions. And that's not healthy. That's why we're seeing the family breakdowns within our culture. Everyone has this fear of the West, and it's the West this and the West that. And I'm like, hey, this was happening long before the West had any influence. So we need to move away from blaming the West. That's a defensive stance. You mean you're giving the West that much power? Are you? Or is it that we're not addressing the deeper issues that's happening within our families and cultural expectations and norms? Now, some of you may be very upset with me for saying that, and that's fine. You could be upset, but wouldn't we have healthier lives? Like, is the West that much of an influence that you're giving it that much power? Mira? Any thoughts on what I just said? Are we going to get hate comments now? Yalla.
I don't think so.
I mean, it's like, I just, sometimes I get very like, let's just call it out. Let's
Yeah.
stop blaming other people, blame shifting when there are things we need to address within our culture. Stephanie, what did you? No one taught older generations how to not give the West that much power. Scapegoat. That's right. That's right. No, yeah. It's like, take responsibility for where you're at. Okay, now, any questions so far? It's a total effect of colonization. I hear you, Jay. And yet, what can we do with that? How can we empower ourselves together? Mabad. But what I see is that there's still so much division. There's still so much that we are allowing the colonization to impact us. That's why I created this community. I didn't call it Community for International Arab because we are all the roots of the same tree. But we forget that. Yes, Jay, self-hating. Well, I'll be a little vulnerable. And I know I'm digressing from the topic. I had and as a first generation American, Palestinian American, I had significant internalized self-hatred. As much as I loved being Arabiya, I hated being Arabiya because at the crux of that, most of the trauma and the negative experiences and how I see myself was as a result of the culture. Now, I could have leaned into completely shunning myself from the culture, which I did for many, many years, but yet it's embedded within me. This collectiveness, this bonding, this belonging to our community was so strong within me that I couldn't abandon that part of myself. And this may happen to you guys too, okay? And how do we move through that self-hatred? And that means addressing our defensiveness, addressing what happens. So let's talk about common defense mechanisms in mental health, okay? All right, let's go. The number one, projection. Many of you know these already. Projections. How many of you have experienced, you're like feeling great, you're moving along in life, and then you meet a friend, and then they start projecting their own feelings onto you. You look tired. How many of you have had that? Oh, you look tired. Are you okay? And you're feeling great. Now, you need to stop. This is where you're like, I feel good. Now, if they're projecting onto you their own feelings, it's for you to create an awareness around that. Because if you know yourself well enough, you know, I'm not tired, I'm feeling awesome. Okay, that's projection. This is where I see this in the comments a lot. People project onto me a lot of their discomfort. That's your family, not mine. You need to address this for you. And I said, you're projecting. Because whatever I'm saying, if you're healthy and whole within yourself, you wouldn't care what I'm saying. You would just, somebody says something, if it doesn't resonate, you're like, oh, okay, that's their opinion. And you keep it moving. But people that feel the need to say, that's your experience and negating everyone else's, that's a projection because whatever was said in that video created some uncomfortable feelings and then you're going to project it onto somebody else. How are we doing on the comments? How's everybody doing?
Stephanie said every acquisition is an admission.
Every what? Say that again.
Acquisition is an admission.
I love
Comes to
that.
mind.
Oh, I love those things. Yeah. Yes. And that goes for you too, right? It goes for us too. The second one, so we have projection. The second defense mechanism, denial. One of the most common. When someone refuses to face reality and accept reality or facts, they, despite hard evidence that's presented to them, they will become more entrenched in denial. Now, this occurs because whatever is happening externally is causing so much distress for the person internally that they will deny that it's even happening. This goes with health issues. This goes with maybe a child's substance abuse issues or their mental health issue, that the parent will vehemently deny it, even though there's hard evidence there, and they could lean into those uncomfortable feelings and get the support for their family members. But this denial keeps them and everyone stuck because they want to deny what's happening. And typically, one of the things, or you say, I don't need to study, for those of you that are students, I will pass anyway. And you're in denial around some of the stressors of what goes on for your responsibilities. And then things sometimes will cascade. Did that make sense, Mita? The way, like when we deny like our responsibilities and we deny what's happening and we deny the pressures, sometimes that will add to more pressures. Let's see.
Yeah, that's right.
Like they say, or excuse you of doing something that is likely something they are actually doing. Oh my gosh, yes. I could spend a whole hour talking about growing up, and a lot of Banat Arab. We were normal teenagers, and Banat Arab would this is moving away from denial, but they would say the most horrible things. They would judge us, my friends and I, because we were doing normal teen, and they were doing the very same things. But they were so that they would, again, shift blame or make us the problem for things that they were doing themselves. That's a deflection technique, very defensive behavior. All right, couple more. Repression. Repression, okay. It occurs when something happens to you, and it's like you put it in a box, you compartmentalize it, and you put it in the corner of your closet. It's there. You don't want to, you repress those memories, you repress what happened, because in order for you to move forward in your life, and this is so common. This is where I say the resilience of our people is so amazing, because we have family members that have gone through extreme traumas. And because they take the repressed memories and they put it in the corner, but that's what attributes the generational trauma, and you don't address it. So if we were to take, and I'm sorry if this is triggering for people, as an example, an individual with past sexual abuse history and a trauma history may start, it's repressed until they have their own children. And this goes for men and women. And then those repressed memories will come up. So it was adaptive until it doesn't become adaptive. What I always tell people, it's always there, and you will unpack it when you're ready to unpack it. There's no rush. Anybody that rushes, Mita? Anybody that rushes family members to open up about their trauma when they're not ready, you need to be really, really careful about that. So repressed memories can also show up in your romantic partnerships, particularly in the realms of sexual intimacy. So be aware of, if you have repressed memories, eventually they will start seeping into your partnerships and in your relationships. And to gently work with someone, I always encourage someone to work with a qualified therapist or work with a qualified person to be able to help you move through that gently. You cannot rush that process. Another defense mechanism, regression. This is usually experienced with children. So any of you out there that have children, please do your children a favor. It occurs when someone regresses to an earlier stage of maturity or development, when faced with an anxious situation, or if they feel threatened. Some of you may have uncles or brothers or siblings that you will literally see them, they're an adult person, tantruming right in front of you. That's a regressed behavior, because whatever situation was happening rose their anxiety, they felt threatened, and then you will see the regressed behavior. But for those with parents and if you see your child bedwetting or sucking their thumb or doing things that are not age appropriate for them, what do most parents do? They shame them, they tell them, what are you doing? And then that child shuts down. That's a signal, if your child is experiencing regressed behavior, that there's an anxiety-provoking situation, and it may have something to do or a lot to do with you and what's going on in the home. And that's sometimes we need to address that and not to minimize it. As adults, you may see regressed behavior within you if you want like a stuffed animal that you want to hold on to, or your blanket, or a pillow, or and you binge eat on foods that make you feel good, like in childhood, like you're eating. Sometimes that may be a signal of regressed behavior that you're not addressing some of the larger issues. Any questions before I move into the last two? Any questions? Mira, how are we doing on the comments? I see some engagement.
Yeah, they're having a conversation.
I love that. This is what community is all about. I love that you guys are having conversation and dialogue. I love it. Keep going. All right. Another defense mechanism, rationalization. As Arab, we are good at rationalizing anything, myself included. I failed because the teacher didn't like me. This didn't work out because hada hatil ayn alay. I didn't get that promotion because of whatever reason. I'm not in a good place in my life because of my parents. Okay, I couldn't have done this. I could have done this in my life if it wasn't for, and then you blame whoever. This occurs. This rationalization is a deflection technique, a defensive technique, where it occurs when you explain negative behaviors, like whatever's going on within you, and blaming it and rationalizing why you're not in a certain place in your life. Shahad said, I rationalize rather than feel the emotion. Oh my God, and recently realized it was wrong. Thank you for that vulnerability and sharing that. Yeah, a lot of times we're good at making up excuses. Carlina, rationalizing to understand when making excuses just holds you back because you will keep making excuses. That's so true. So when you find yourself rationalizing, oh, I didn't go to the gym today, Asha, I have to do laundry. Or, oh, I didn't accomplish this part of my business today because I was blaming my mom because she asked me to do lots of things. These rationalization techniques only keep you stuck from fulfilling or creating a life for yourself. There's so many more, but in the interest of time, who said intellectualizing? Yes, intellectualizing feelings instead of feeling them. That's right. An example of that would be, well, they are who they are. That's okay. Let me meet them where they're at. And that's good. On the surface, it's beautiful. But this is what I was saying earlier in the live. It's also very dangerous because you may be feeling rage inside, but because you keep intellectualizing people's poor behavior, people's crossing your boundaries, people criticizing you, and you're intellectualizing, they have trauma, they're haram, like look at their situation. No, you part of it is you honoring your own feelings around that. And then you could do something moving forward. Let's see, there's so many, but in the interest of time, any questions so far before I move into how do we manage and overcome defense mechanisms? Like now what? Okay, now we do all these things. Let me ask a question. Anybody that's watching, which defense mechanism do you use? So we said some people will intellectualize, rationalize. Let me go over them real quick. Projection, how many of you project or deny or repress, regress in behavior? Rationalization, and the last one I wanted to talk about was compartmentalization, where it's not necessarily healthy. It's like if you have stressors at work, yeah, we see a lot of rationalization. Thank you, Carlina. Fatima, thank you. Yes. Deny, thanks, Christine. Yeah, very much so. We all do these things at some point. We repress because I don't like conflict. Rhonda, oh my gosh, Rhonda. I wish you and I can have this open dialogue and conversation because for many of us, we are conflict. Some of us are conflict avoidant and some of us are not. We're fighters. So yes, when you tend to avoid conflict, it perpetuates the conflict usually. Okay. Now let's finish up. I am loving all of this. I am loving all of this. Yes, very good. Okay, so how do we overcome? I've threaded throughout all this live that it's about self-awareness. So it is tuning into your body, noticing when the reaction is, pausing. You got to take a deep breath or take a time out, move away from what's happening so that you can recognize your feelings before reacting. Have an understanding, even in the moment. Like when my sister called me out on something, in the moment I was like, okay, this is hard to hear, but I need to address this with her. Like, she's sharing a need. How do I move through that? How do I move through that? That takes lots of practice. And so this is the more self-awareness you can have of yourself and tuning into your body, the more you will be able to manage these distressful emotions and become less defensive. And that could be through mindfulness, journaling, introspection, exercise. Like, I don't know. There's so many things you could do to tune yourself into your own body. The next one is, if you're working with a therapist or working with someone, to shift your stories, because we create a lot of stories which create defensive behavior. And so if you were to do cognitive behavioral strategies, such as reframing negative thoughts, understanding that that person may not be attacking you, that your anxiety may be high, let's minimize creating stories in our mind and really looking at what evidence do we have in front of us that this is truly occurring. And that does take a lot of practice. And now, because we have, I think somebody wrote in the comments, victim mentality, this victim mentality may keep us stuck in moving from the victim to a solution, more empowered place. And that does require changing the narrative that we have of ourselves, changing the narrative we have of other people, and shifting out of that victim mentality. The last piece is, and this is, again, we have to be careful with how we address this in our culture. Being more assertive, sharing our feelings, but that could be really unsafe in some of our family systems. And this is where you practice it with people that you feel safe with. And that may be, hey, I didn't like what you said. And then the other person will tolerate that and be able to have what I call a healing experience and find those people. Addressing emotional regulation techniques. So I talked about the power of the pause. If you have really intense emotions, you're not going to get out of that cognitively. That's where you go for a walk. You may want to drink some cold water. There's lots of techniques and problem solving skills, which I will address in another video, but look at healthy coping mechanisms and look up specifically emotional regulation techniques. And this is where talking it out with people that are safe, talking about it with a therapist, can really be helpful in shifting the framing of the problem and becoming less defensive and going, oh, I have a greater understanding. And then you could move forward in a healthy communication. All right. That's all I got. I hope this was helpful. And
Yeah, it was very helpful.
I'm sorry, Mira.
I said it was very helpful.
I'm so glad. To everyone that's joined in, let's see, Dima, it takes two to tango. Yes, it does. We can't row a boat with one oar. And many couples forget that it takes two to be able to do the work. Thank you, Christine. You're the best. I really appreciate the feedback. And thank you for everyone who engaged in dialogue. Thank you for being here. I cannot express to you guys, just many of you being on this live or just engaging in the work is so important that it takes courage to do this. All of us we're the mind, like this is like, we're not common. So I just want to applaud you for just being open to listening, to doing the work, to going within yourself. You guys are amazing. I cannot do this without you. Let's see. Where from Palestine are you? Yes, of course you can ask. My family is from Ramallah. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Rhonda. Fatima, let's see. When do you usually do your lives? Yeah, thank you, Fatima. Every Sunday, you will find me at 10 a.m. Sitti Sunday. It's named after my great grandmother, Maria, who I adore. She was the one person in my life that offered so much wisdom. And so this is in honor of her. Sitti Sunday, where we talk about mental health topics. Let's see. I felt seen, heard as a third generation of the diaspora. Stephanie, oh my God, I got emotional. That's why I did this for the younger generations, because I did not want any younger generation to go through what I went through, what my cousins went through. We suffered, and there was nobody to guide us. There was nobody to give us these things. We just had to navigate it on our own. It was so hard. And I didn't want the younger generation to go through. I could not, like, if I'm going to look at my life and my work and my career, I could not imagine offering the younger generation a different viewpoint and to validate that it's very challenging. I'm sorry I got emotional, because this means a lot to me. It really does. Oh, your family's from Rija, Jericho. I love that. All right. Anything else? Oh, yes, Carlina, you bring up something very important around explaining our culture can be really, really hard, and I get that. And this is where anybody that's seeking like a Arab provider or a Middle Eastern provider, I do have some resources, and then I also have a couple workshops coming up and a small group coming up. Mira will be sending out information probably in March, right, Mira? Where we've got cultural messages and expectations workshop. We have a managing anxiety workshop. Oh, I'm collaborating with another Middle Eastern therapist. She's amazing. It's called Slow Down and Show Up. She's going to talk about burnout. I've got a small group. I know a lot of you want to do one-on-one with me, but I am doing a small group, 8 to 10 people. You guys get me every week, where we come together, only Middle Eastern people, where we come together and really dive through some of these issues and accomplish our goals and gain some skills. And I'm really excited for that. Let's see. And Dima offered a suggestion. Ladies, read In Search of Fatima for Al-Qarni. Okay, there you go. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thank you for everything. I wish you all a wonderful next step in whatever it is you decide to do. A good night for those of you who are there. And thank you. Somalia's in the house. I love it. This is great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. I appreciate you. Wednesday, we have Wadek Wednesday, where I can answer more questions and answers. And I'll see you guys next Sunday. Have a good one.